Hello, I'm Brent Stafford, and this is Aftermath of Murder, Survivor Stories. This series goes behind the headlines as survivors share their stories about the loss, grief, trauma, and the hope for healing in the aftermath of murder. Joining us today for the fourth video in our series is Brenda Morrison, the director of the Center for Restorative Justice at the School of Criminology at Simon Fraser University. Brenda, thanks for joining us today.
It's great to be here, thanks.
What is restorative justice?
Well, the best way to think about restorative justice is in contrast to what our criminal justice process offers. It's a contest between the state and the alleged offender. And the people involved in that conversation are the state and those who represent the state, and the offender and those who represent the offender. And the questions that they ask are, what law has been broken? Who did it? What do they deserve? That's the conversation. And in that process, victims are often marginalized. Communities are marginalized, and those are the groups that are most affected by crime in our communities. And so restorative justice invites those people to be part of the conversation too. So the people that participate in a restorative justice process are those most affected. Victims and their families, offenders and their families, communities, and we ask a different set of questions. Who's been hurt? Who's been harmed? What are their needs? And whose obligation is it to fulfill those needs?
So it expands out,
It expands out.
Right.
It's a wider set of questions. And in asking that last question, that's where the offender can step up for direct accountability and answer questions that didn't come out in a court process. So the two complement each other in various ways. So in a state-based process, a conventional criminal justice process is more focused on what happened in the past. A restorative justice process at its best is about focusing on the future and what we need to do to heal and move ahead, to redevelop our lives, and to prevent such harms from happening again.
What's the actual process for people when they've just heard all of that? They could maybe understand that, but they don't know still what it is.
So what it is, you would, it's a voluntary process. So you would contact one of the people who represents a restorative justice process in your community or at a state level, and they would do some work with you to test the readiness for that process, and in the end they would bring people together to have a conversation. Typically that happens well after the sentence has been handed down and the person is often incarcerated somewhere in a federal institution, and when there's readiness on both parties. And some of the conversation is about just maybe ascertaining a few facts that didn't come out in the criminal justice process. Some people want just to know the last words that their loved one said. Or it can be something more complex, something that's more meaningful. Because what victims want to know is why? Why me? Why my son? Why my daughter? Why did it happen then? And a lot of those questions aren't answered in a criminal justice process.
And do they get answered, or more likely to get answered in the restorative justice process?
They're significantly more likely to have those answers, those answers given a response, because the person that was there in those last hours is sitting there. And there's been a lot of work done by the facilitator before they come face to face. So there's a readiness, so there's expectations. This is what their needs are. This is what they want out of the process, and that's made very clear before people enter into the process.
It sounds like the process is extremely important to healing.
It's very important to the healing. And the other interesting difference between a conventional criminal justice process is even when the institution was set up, we separated reason from emotion. We wanted to focus on the facts and not let people's emotional, energy sort of dilute the case in any way. We ask for order in the court. In the restorative justice process, we find reason for emotion. The emotional energy of the process is what drives the outcomes that we receive. And that's why even though people often aren't seeking forgiveness when they enter the process, sometimes it just comes out voluntarily as a gift that they give each other. Because sometimes people enter the process and all they want to know is the last words that loved ones said. What happened in the last moments? Can you tell me a little bit of this? Because victims want to know why it happened. Why me? it all seems tragically unfair.
So do you go to school for this? Obviously you're SFU, so.
Yes, well, to become a trainer in restorative justice, there's a lot of different training programs. We offer some of the most comprehensive training in restorative justice internationally. And we have both the undergraduate programs, we have graduate programs, and we have an online certificate that you can take for credit through continuing education.
If you or someone you know has experienced a loss through homicide, go to the BC Victims of Homicide website at bcvoh.com to find available resources and information on upcoming support groups. If you're interested in volunteering or to make a donation, visit the BC Bereavement Helpline website. And to reach both by phone, call 604-738-9950 or toll free 1-877-779-2223. This has been Aftermath of Murder Survivor Stories.